Dear students, this is just to give you a little bit more of an idea and incentive to the exercise of the grounded theory essay that I've asked you to do. You should have started to read the book on the basics of qualitative research by Corbin and Strauss. And having done that, you should have started to explore a little bit the ideas and backgrounds of the grounded theory. I've also put up a video made by Natalia Cantor, the main professor of the aula. Should also have given you some kind of ideas about where we are heading at. Just to give you a few ideas about the grounded theory. Grounded theory, the idea of the grounded theory is to somehow get back to the idea of basing research into or within empirical data, within the empirical grounds of research. I could argue that the grounded theory goes back to basic ideas of phenomenology. You could trace it back, for example, to the ideas that Heidegger developed in Being and Time, where he shows that it's actually necessary to start developing theoretical ideas and theoretical reflections from the concrete objects and things that surround us. It's also an idea that you can find within the grounded theory. The basic idea of the grounded theory is that you go actually into the field without having at least not foreclosed knowledge on the theories that you are going to use in order to analyze that what you're going to find, and without actually predefining deductively, if you want to say so, the basic idea of what you are going to discover in the field. So having somehow the idea of a more general topic, you start to pursue your research, being open for any kind of experiences, discoveries and changes that might going to happen to you during you're on the field. After having discovered or worked on the first round of empirical research, the grounded theory suggests, or the authors of the grounded theory, inventors if you want to say so, suggest that you are actually moving forward and start to develop kind of form of categories, more abstract ideas, and start to develop on some kind of theory. However, this does not mean that you stop there, but it means also that at some point you need to go back into the empirical research in order to prove and to refine some of the results that you had already discovered or gained. So in a certain sense, you could imagine the grounded theory somehow as really a cyclical movement, or like a spiral that moves upwards, and that in every step takes up the energy from the last cycle of research, of doing empirical work within the theoretical framework. Interesting thing is that sometimes it's not just about the theory building, but it can also about the methodology or methods that you're going to use in order to figure out what the interesting discoveries of your research object are. So sometimes you might start with the idea that you need to do quantitative analysis, but then you figure out that it's necessary to go on a more, or get a more qualitative approach, and you decide to work with, let's say, open interviews. Sometimes you might have thought it's enough to do some focus group discussions, but then you figure out that what you get in the focus groups is not specific enough, and you need to do some additional field observation, and so on and so on. A last thing that I want to mention, and that will hopefully help you also to understand a little bit the closeness and differentiations of the grounded theory from other methodologies, is that in a certain way we could argue that the grounded theory has some kind of similar elements and ideas, background ideas, than ethnography in anthropology has. In ethnographies, the idea of going kind of plank into the field and starting to discover is also very present, and it's kind of continuous movement between theory building and empirical research as well. Another thing that I want to mention, and that you might need to take into account, is that although it is mainly used for qualitative research, grounded theory and the basic ideas of the grounded theory do not exclude the use of quantitative methods in order to gather data, which means basically that you can use the grounded theory for quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods approaches. I hope this is going to help you a bit and make you get some ideas. I would really appreciate if you would start to have some discussion within the wiki. I suggest opening up 1 or 2 sections where you want to exchange some of the ideas that you discover within the book, and you discuss them with your students, co-students, colleagues, or however you want to call that. I opened in the wiki 2 sections that you can already use. Put up some short paragraphs, some kind of question or reflection, and I would ask you to comment on it. If you comment, please do it with using your name and the date, so that people at least more or less know how to orient themselves within the corresponding wiki space. So that's it for the moment, and yes, see you later.